how are you doing? So today on the Hillary Show, we will be discussing poverty, homelessness, teen pregnancy, and mental illness. These are all from my latest book, and I'll show you what it looks like. Yeah, that's what it looks like. We'll also be conversing with some guest speakers, and this is just to get an inside look on these topics from people around our nation. So if you'd like to follow along and read up more on this topic, we'll be covering chapter 23, starting on page 392. Okay, so first up we have Anna. She's currently homeless and living with her daughter. So let's give her a warm welcome. Anna, please tell us a little bit about yourself and how your living situation has affected you and your daughter's life and your access to health care.
Hello, I'm Anna, and I'm 23 years old, and I am homeless. I also have a daughter that is almost 6 years old. My story is that I got pregnant in high school, and I had to drop out and get a full-time job to support us. And around a year ago, I lost my job, and my parents kicked us all out, or kicked us both out. I also lost my car because I was no longer able to make the payments, and I have not been able to get another job or get back on my feet since then. I'm not really able to afford health care, and we don't have insurance, so we only really go to the hospital if it's necessary, and whenever we do go, we go to the ER, and they don't ever turn us away. I feel really bad because I know that this is costly to our community, but I really have. And for shelter, me and my daughter, we stay at shelters at night, and that's nice because we actually have somewhere to sleep and somewhere to take a shower. But I do feel like a bad mother because my daughter misses school a lot, and even when she goes to school, sometimes her clothes are dirty or they don't fit her. And since becoming homeless, I have suffered severe depression, and I have noticed that my daughter has had really out of character behavior, and she acts out a lot, and I'm pretty sure this has to do with our instability and the change in her life. And my biggest fear is that my daughter will grow up and fail out of school just like I did or drop out like I did. And I'm also scared that we will develop health problems because we're unable to get health care like we should because we're unable to afford it.
Wow, what a story. It is heartbreaking knowing that our nation has so many people struggling to get by or afford basic health care. I'm so grateful to be given this opportunity to share her story with you. And just continue listening because we'll have some more stories. Next up, we have Jane. She's one of millions living in poverty. Why don't you go ahead and tell us about yourself, Jane?
Hi, my name is Jane, and I was one of the 46 million Americans living in poverty in 2014, and I still am.
Do you have any children, Jane? And if you don't mind sharing, how much do you make annually?
I have 4 children, and I make less than $24,000 a year. I really need double that in order to support my family.
Now, tell me about how you grew up.
My grandmother took care of me and supported me growing up as a child, and she received Social Security benefits, but really, that wasn't enough to support us. I dropped out of high school whenever I was 16 because I got pregnant, and I needed a job in order to support my family.
Do you have any help with raising your children, Jane?
I take care of my children all on my own, and my children's father doesn't pay child support.
And what about the rest of your family? Are they struggling too?
My sister makes a little over $24,300 a year, so she does not receive any benefits from the government, but she really needs help taking care of her children as well.
What worries do you live with on a daily basis, Jane?
I am worried that I could lose my home. My children wear hand-me-down clothes. I try to buy them clothes whenever I can, and I also don't have transportation to work. I walk to and from work every day.
Do you receive any benefits from the government?
I do receive benefits from the government. I do receive food stamps and Medicaid, and I also rely on the WIC program to help support me and my children. But I'm still worried that I won't have enough money to pay a medical bill if there's an emergency. And I'm also worried that I won't be able to retire whenever I'm older because my job does not offer any health or retirement benefits.
What about the neighborhood you live in? What's it like?
I don't live in a very good neighborhood. A few weeks ago, my home was broken into and all of my savings were stolen. I don't feel comfortable taking my children out to go play in the neighborhood because I live in an area that has a high crime rate. There's also no point in taking my children out because there's no park in my neighborhood for my children to go and play at.
I'm so sorry to hear that. It must be difficult to raise children in those conditions. Is there anything else that you would like to add?
I just don't make enough money to meet the basic needs of my family. I just wish that I was treated like everyone else.
Well, thank you so much, Jane. We really appreciate your input.
Now on sale, Foundations for Population, Health, and Community, Public Health Nursing, as seen on The Hillary Show, for the low price of $64.76. Pick up your copy now.
Okay, and on to mental illness. The Healthy People 2020 characterized mental health as being able to engage in productive activities and fulfilling relationships with other people to adapt to change and to cope with adversity. So what does mental illness mean, you might ask? We will be looking for more information from someone who suffers from a mental illness herself. That way we can get a first-hand glimpse. Please welcome our next guest, who will be joining us via video call. Hello, Tiana.
Thank you for having me on your show, Hillary. I'm very excited as a mental health advocate and also someone who suffers from mental illness to talk about these topics with you. I hope you don't mind I brought some notes, but this is just a very important subject and I really can't wait to talk to you about it. So you asked me what is mental illness, so I want to go ahead and define that. So what this is, it is characterized by alterations in thinking, mood, or behavioral associated with distress or impaired functioning. So there are two categories. There is AMI, which is any mental illness, and the other is SMI, serious mental illness. AMI is considered someone having a mental, behavioral, or emotional disorder in the past year that met DSM-IV criteria. SMI is if someone has any mental behavior or emotional disorder that sustainedly interferes with life.
Wow, that is a lot of good information. Thank you. Do you have time for questions?
Yes, of course. I can try and answer them the best that I can.
What could be considered a mental illness?
So there are many disorders that are characterized under mental illness, such as anxiety, depression, bipolar disorder, PTSD, phobias, and a lot of others. Another mental health disorder that we don't talk about often is Alzheimer's, and it can create a major health burden not only on the patient itself, but the family. Mental illness can also be a secondary problem for people who have other disabilities.
Now, what would you say is the biggest concern regarding mental illness?
Right now, mental illness is very under-recognized. It causes the same amount of disability as heart diseases and cancers, and depression is among the 20th leading cause of death worldwide. One of the biggest reasons is because not many people are seeking help for their mental illness, and also that it's very stigmatized and there's a lack of social support. Also, there are not many accessible or coordinated service for people with severe mental issues.
Do you think COVID-19 and the situation that most Americans are in right now will have any effect on mental illness?
Absolutely. There is a growing awareness of concerns about the public burden of stress, which can consist of COVID-19 or other illnesses, terrorist attacks, natural disasters, man-made disasters, war, and other economic crises. Community nurses play such a big part in fighting all of these things. They identify stressful events, assess stress response, and educate communities. They also step in to help alleviate disability and disease related to stress.
I have read about things far and few, but do you know about deinstitutionalizing?
So yes, I actually have done some research on this, and it's quite very interesting. So what this does is it involves people moving out from mental illness hospitals and moving them into communities. Some of these communities can include someone's family, it can include nursing homes, it can also include apartments with people that are there for support, and it can also include apartments that aren't supervised. So the goal of this was to improve the quality of life for people who had mental problems and provide services to the community. However, there were just not enough resources whenever this was going on, and the continuity of care became a problem. People taking care of family members realized how truly hard it was, and the financial and mental burden. Education was not provided to staffs of nursing homes, so they didn't quite know how to, per se, handle a certain situation with people with mental illness. So there's also something that I want to talk about called community health centers that had the belief that people with mental disorders had the right to treatment, but as well as this had a lack of resources and services.
So you would say it's a fail, right?
So yes, as previously stated, it was a fail due to the lack of resources.
How do Americans with disabilities relate to deinstitutionalizing?
So this ties in because it's a resource that actually helps people with any illness be an active member of society. The Act states that individuals with mental and physical disabilities not be discriminated against, but not be brought into the mainstream of American life through access of employment and public services. I was very thankful to be part of this act, so that's just a very important thing.
Wow, that is very interesting. So what we haven't hit on is at-risk populations for mental illness. Have you done any research on that?
So, I have mental illness. Honestly, mental illness, there's some other risk factors, but it can affect anyone from any race, cultural background, or socioeconomic background. So, if you don't mind, what I want to do is break down the risk factors by age groups, if that's okay with you.
Of course.
Okay, so we're going to go ahead and start with adolescent kids. So adolescent kids are the most influential people in the most influential age group. So the key to this group is to reduce mental health problems that will stop them from developing mental health problems into adulthood. Another main goal is to increase the numbers of children that are screened and treated with mental illness. So, adolescents are at risk for disruption of normal development due to biological, environmental, and psychosocial factors that can impair their mental health. Exposure to community violence was a significant stress and depression in children, and this can include physical fights and bullying, which is prevalent in this age group. So I want to talk about some gender risk in this age group. So males are more often likely to commit suicide, while females are more likely to have suicidal ideation. And so that is very just concerning and something that we want to continue to assess for, that I'm really advocating for. So now adults. There's so much going on as adults, as we all know, and there's a lot of stress going on. So it is believed that every adult will go through a time of tragic loss, serious setback, or a time of profound sadness. However, this is not depression, and they are usually not diagnosed with depression, as depression differs in intensity and duration. And also, depressiveness intervenes with a person being able to function, and it can be fatal as well. So yes, you might have a setback, but it won't necessarily be categorized as depression. So, as adults, there is so much stress. We have jobs, we have lack of resources, and unstable relationships in this period. Health of People 2020 objectives are aimed at helping adults balance all of this and get treatment. Another thing with adults is PTSD. Many people in this age category are going to war, which can cause PTSD, but they're also suffering from domestic violence, and that is a large thing that we need to screen for. Okay, and so what I want to go ahead and talk about is the older adult. So they are very unique in this category. Mental health and substance abuse in this category often occur with other health problems, so this can complicate treatment. With aging, you see this group of people having dementia, Alzheimer's, or vascular conditions, and vascular conditions can cause a severe loss of mental abilities, so this can also impair them. This age group is also at risk for depression due to not having a sense of being independent. They are in nursing homes, they have someone take care of them, or their family takes care of them. They also have social deprivation and isolation. They also can suffer from abuse or neglect, and also possible loss of family, friends, or other. So I talked about age, I talked about some gender risk factors. Now what I want to talk about is socioeconomics. So people with lower income often lack resources for meeting basic physical and mental health needs. So with this, even if they have mental health issues, they're having a hard time going to a doctor and getting diagnosed and getting the proper treatment. And this is once again, it boils down to our resources.
So, what would you say the nurse's role is in each of these subgroups?
So the nurse has several roles when it comes to mental illness. So they need to learn to recognize and provide health services in a non-traditional health setting. For adolescents, they may mean promoting and collaborating with schools, family, social services, churches, and mental facilities. Along with collaborating with these people, all of these locations are also great places to hold an assessment. Like I said, our key role is early detection and early prevention and treatment, so that is very important. Another important thing is the education of parents and guardians. Sometimes media can influence an individual, especially in this age group, so we want to really watch for that and teach them. So now for adults. Nurses need to screen for depression, suicide, violence, and also substance use in every clinical visit. Suicide can be prevented in many cases by early recognition and can help guide patients to get the help they need. Nurses play a vital role with adults who have mental illness because they deal with individuals that trust them. As a healthcare provider, we just tend to trust you guys more, so it's very important. Also talked about recently, I know Hillary brought on a couple other people that talked about, I know we had a poor woman that was suffering from homelessness. A lot of people that are homeless also suffer from mental illness and they don't have the proper resources. So this is another part where the nurse's role has to go out in the community and help educate. So what can a nurse provide? They can provide case management services, coordinating resources, function as an important member of assertive community treatment programs, and also provide support and encouragement. The nurse's role with older adults consists of organizing health promotion programs, assess and intervene in people who may be experiencing abuse or neglect. And also, the nurse's role in this particular scenario is not just for the older adult. It's also for the nursing home staff, providing stress management and education to them. It's also going further and going into a caregiver. Having someone that's older, and if you're a caregiver, it's a very big responsibility, and so it can be mentally draining and stressful. And they also usually don't have someone they can talk to, and they're usually alone, the caregivers are. So you want to also go out there and educate them that they do have resources, that they need to seek help if possible as well if they're having mental issues. So one last subject I want to talk on is cultural diversity. I'm not going to touch much on it as each culture has a very diverse background, and so it's more pertaining to each individual culture and ethnic background that you need to pay attention on. So the culture might perceive mental illness and understand that not everyone will seek medical help or even try to cope with the mental illness. They might put it off as something else, and they also might perceive it as something else. Another thing a nurse should do is conduct a community assessment to determine unique characteristics and factors that contribute to mental illness needed in a certain population. I know this is a lot, but I appreciate you taking the time to hear me out, Hillary. Thank you.
Well, thank you for sharing, Tiana. I really appreciate it. Bye, we'll see you later. So our last guest speaker is named Tegan. She is a young teen who is pregnant, and she's going to be giving us some of her insight on what the experience has been like and just some of the things that she's learned through this process. So let's give a warm welcome to Tegan.
I'm Tegan. I'm a young teen mother. Some things I just want to talk to y'all about, let y'all know. It's very important after talking to my nurses, that as a young mother, you go and get checked early, because a lot of teens don't go and get checked. They hope that the pregnancy might go away, which was something I did, and I waited really late. If abortion was an option for me, I missed it because I found out I was pregnant at about 15 weeks and it's at 13 weeks. A big thing is that to a reason for why I should have went and got checked early, and a lot of other young pregnant teens should get checked early, is because pretty much teenagers have a higher risk of having a baby born at a lower birth weight. So there'd be like 5.5 pounds or something like that. And it's important also because like what they're telling me is like with our eating habits and stuff like that, like it's not good because a lot of our snacks contain a lot of sugar, and we don't need to eat a lot of sugar, especially not for our baby, because apparently it can cause diabetes, gestational diabetes, I guess. I mean, it wouldn't happen to my first child. It happened more to my second one if I was having one. I hope I don't have one anytime soon. But they just recommended me a diet of more vegetables, beefy lean products, a lot of soy products, stuff like that, healthier things to eat. And some other things that were important for me to learn is that gaining weight beyond what was needed could cause my baby to have hypoglycemia. But they talked to me about a lot of options, about adoption, things like that, getting together with members of my church, and counselors. And they also talked to me about like when returning to school, if I need to have childcare, and just a whole bunch of things that just really needed to be discussed so I could have a better understanding of how to deal with this, because I am just, a young teen, and I didn't mean to get pregnant, but I did. And, it's just really important, mostly overall, for young teens to go and get checked if they feel they are pregnant. Don't hold off, don't wait, go get checked and get as much help from as many resources as you can. Thank you.
So, how does all of this affect nursing? Well, nurses need to know about these topics because it affects the levels of prevention. So, the levels of prevention include primary, secondary, and tertiary. Primary prevention is based on educating, teaching, and support. For example, with people who are struggling with mental illness, educate them on what they are going through to improve their outcome. These patients need teaching about managing stress and support to adequately encourage them. Secondary prevention is when teachings and screenings are done to detect mental illness and provide interventions after a stressful event. The point of this is to limit disability and allow for the best possible outcome. Now, tertiary prevention is used to reduce disability. Nurses need to know this to provide health promotion activities to a person struggling with mental illness and to promote good support groups to these patients. Now, the role of nurses when caring for people who fall within the groups is to care for them and help them feel comfortable and safe. Nurses create trusting environments to open therapeutic relationships for these patients, show respect, compassion, and concern for all good results with high-risk clients. So, eliminate assumptions and provide a holistic assessment for the patient to identify underlying needs, because this is crucial. It is also important for nurses to coordinate with services and providers to allow for awareness of all the healthcare options. There is so much stigma around patients who are homeless, living in poverty, having children at young ages, and struggling with mental illness. You need to advocate for these patients to ensure that they get the most out of their healthcare team. Nurses need to focus on preventing illnesses by teaching patients important information regarding to their health. Nurses get to be part of patients' lives for long enough to encourage and inspire the patient to get better. Thank you for tuning in to The Hillary Show. We'll see you next week. Bye!